control. It began when Jim disparaged Nas on the Fat Joe and Jadakiss podcast, saying that he is a greater rapper than Nas and has contributed more to culture than Nas could. That's a daring assertion, particularly from someone who formerly had a deep affection for Nas. What, then, caused him to make such a drastic change? Some claimed that the flip felt staged since it was so abrupt. People are already speculating that Jay-Z may be rearranging parts behind the scenes. This isn't a casual jab. Jim is being accused by 50 of acting like a Jay-Z puppet, and people are quickly taking notice of that charge. And look at this. The timeline has drawn attention from fans due to its strange appearance. Jim made fun of Have in interviews for years. Acting as though they would never get along, he would make jabs anytime he had the chance. Then, without warning, he starts speaking to Jay as if he were his older brother, with nothing but reverence. No matter how you cut it, that type of switch-up seems risky. Let's go back to the beginning of this turmoil. He desired that. He was observing them as they were, such as Mace and Can, and saw that he had them at last. He possessed one. Oh, I see. And after looking, I realized that I had just taken. I wasn't sure whether he would go for it. So I shot the murder to see. Oh, I see. However, I thought, we like Jimmy better than you anyway. You had to watch to see how he responded after music. Yes, inform him that we desire him. Jimmy, we want you to come to the show. Yes, however, that was one of the things Tu always said. It's just certain artists. I said, damn, when is he going to have his moment like Fat? Jim pulled up to sit with Fat Joe and Jada to kiss, to break down some recent hits. But things quickly went south. After that, he bit into it because it seemed like he was having a moment that he wasn't sure would ever happen again. Then he went for them. Joe mentioned the outrageous comparisons that younger fans have been making, claiming that some of them think Jim has contributed more to hip-hop than Nas. Jim had to maintain his composure and perhaps even show some respect at that point. Rather, he dismissed it with a chuckle, saying, "These new kids don't even know." He then emphasized that his impact goes well beyond that. I wasn't in the advertisement, for example, since Jay-Z and them were creating it. Oh, I see. Thus, I believe they still have some energy in my direction. Do you believe that your exclusion from the advertisement was intentional? No. I don't believe that they were claiming that I had some problems with the NFL, but I'm not sure what those problems are. I'm not sure what the problem is. Do you understand what I mean? Likened I am with him, since he was able to communicate with Nori. Yeah, I swear, I talked to the big homie. You were telling me, that the white boy wouldn't do the truth without 50, he added. I told my good friend Jay-Z to come pull up on me after I struck him, and he did, saying, the white guy called for 50 Cent. Who's the white guy? I asked. I'm considering this, Jimmy Eaney? And he said, no. Eminem called directly for 50. He said, that's his guy. He said, I can't do it if I can't break 50 off, but that's his guy, right? And I'm like, that's when I start saying crazy stuff because I look and I go, oh, that's your big homie, all right. And so he imagines himself after a gay painter. What are we talking about here? Boss, the big homie wants to appear like a homosexual painter. Oh my gosh, I think I know where we're headed. He wants to appear like a homosexual painter. Going with this, what I'm trying to tell you is that when you look at it, it's not mine. It's theirs. Their heart, isn't that right? But when you consider M's legacy as a whole, dude, it took everyone by surprise. When Jim began boasting about his legacy, he neglected to mention the diplomats or the crew who helped create that wave. Even though it is undeniable that Dipset had a run, molded a whole era, and had a lasting impression, Jadakiss's entire face fell when he stated it, giving the impression that he carried Harlem alone and was the driving force for whatever the movement developed into. The man didn't even need to speak a word, but his silence was shouting, "Stop the cap!" As if he had just heard the most out-of-pocket take of the year. With all of his might, everyone is aware that Nas is a true legend. There's no need for argument. I recently came across a video on Instagram in which a small child compared you to Nas and said, yes, my young boy. Strong hits? You taught him how to wear the BB Simon belt, so he looked to you. How absurd is it that he obtained his swag? You understand what I mean when I say that Nas is like a deity in my period. To put it another way, we love that he adored Jim Joe when he was younger. Therefore, let me be that small child. I respect Nas, but I want you to break down. Let's do this. It's crazy because Jim didn't really begin to gain genuine recognition in rap until Ballin took off and reached the charts. And now, the same person who was thrilled to meet Nas last year is now asserting that he's the superior artist. I recall that Nas debut song, The Barbecue, came out while I was in the 11th grade. That is just ego on steroids, not confidence. Jadakiss maintained his composure, but without saying a word, his expression said, "All, believe me, every well-known performer who watched that immediately struck by the intensity." However, Jim drove at full speed without applying the brakes. He claimed that he could surpass Nas in every aspect, including better bars, sharper flow, more impact, greater relevance, and the complete package. He went one step further and declared, "I'm more relevant, more than Nas has ever been." That wasn't bold confidence. It dropped jaws in addition to raising eyebrows. That was utter anarchy, and Jim began throwing out statistics like he was giving evidence in court to make it seem official. His attempt to turn data into a shield billboard, numbers, Spotify streams, viral hits, album placements, the entire digital scoreboard was rejected by the internet. Nas supporters filled the comments area with charts, great albums, award lists, and everything else they could think of to remind everyone that Nas has been delivering classic music long before Jim even got a record deal. They made it plain they wouldn't allow anybody to change history by reposting the statistics and dragging the claims. Since Nas was my childhood idol, let's face it, even non-fanatics could perceive the difference here. When it came to the attire, wordplay, music, and everything else, I was an absolute Nas fan, and I will never take that away from him. However, once I started playing the game, you had to know that the opponents would be idols. That being said, I created my own style and lane that these youngsters began to gravitate toward. It's a completely different generation, much to how I used to pull toward Nas when I was younger. There is a significant difference between 94 and 93. When I was in the 11th grade, in 2025 _ you get what I mean? I want people to get that. So when I briefly tell folks that they don't really know who Nas is, if he's 22, he was born in 2003, yes, he's 20 years old. Which illustrates the period of time he's in, that I came into light and began going wild that these youngsters adore me. Some of them are aware, but this dispute didn't appear out of nowhere. Since Nas called out Dipet and even made fun of Cameron's Come Home With Me album, calling it garbage, in the early 2000s, this tension has been boiling. Cam retaliated over the Hate Me Now rhythm. After then, it escalated into a full-fledged conflict. For years, the two factions exchanged insults, released diss tracks, and disparaged one another in interviews. Harlem versus Queens, Pride versus Legacy, and no one held back. However, this is when the entire narrative takes a turn for the worse. Jim and Jay-Z were at odds at the same time as the Dipset versus Nas. Conflict was intensifying. Jay used to publicly make fun of Jim, and things quickly went out of control. When Jay declined to appoint Cameron as Rockefeller's vice president, the true conflict erupted and there was a significant breakdown between the Cam's lengthy, bitter feud with Jay began when Hob, Jim, and the Harlem crew supported him throughout these months. Rather, they were years of intense anger between both parties. Jim is suddenly praising Jay-Z while criticizing Nas, despite having spent years targeting both of them. This change in tone got people talking since it doesn't seem random at all. Jim Jones and Cameron always felt like they were taken advantage of back in the Rockefeller era. This appears to be a premeditated, strategic move that has the whole rap world watching every word he says. They thought the label used Harlem's energy and flair to enhance their own brand and appear hip. Now that Jim has changed his mind so quickly, fans are asking what the true reason is for this abrupt change in devotion. I've been paddling a number of them, but they always seem to think that Rockefeller employed Harlem style. I hear the comparisons and the attempt to act funny when it comes. I'm referring to the industry I've been working in. So let's avoid getting into a numerical discussion where I have to provide you with my accomplishments. Did you hear? You heard what other people were doing? If you'd want to view the Billboard entries, go to Ends and then My Billboards. I want to go down. I want to go down the line now because we are moving down the line. Listen, we can't compare that to what I'm trying to tell you. No, you don't. Let's go. He's a rapper, and I am. Statistically, he's a rapper, and I am. Statistically, it feels fantastic. No, but I want to go statistically because when people say things like, I feel the same and forget about the numbers, you heard my numbers again. So allow me to take the lead. Then discard them as if they were completely irrelevant. And people forget that Dame Dash, not Jay-Z, was the one who first introduced them to the rock world. However, after Jay took complete command, Jim didn't keep quiet about it. Instead, he expressed his feelings to the entire world. Cam felt as though he deliberately drove them out, as if he intended to remove their impact and lessen Harlem's sparkle. He attacked Jay directly, accusing him of cutting Harlem out of the entire Rockefeller movement, branding him wimpy, and claiming he was cut off from the streets. This wasn't just rap rhetoric for publicity. Jim carried it all the way to the streets, getting into a full-fledged altercation inside a Manhattan Louis Vuitton shop on December 22, 2008. It wasn't just some old push. The individual he battled was a close friend and business colleague of Jay-Z. Almost a year later, Jim entered a guilty plea to minor assault, since this was a personal matter with actual history. And when fans claim that his fight with Heb went far further than rap beef usually does, they always use that episode as evidence. However, here is the section that completely turns the narrative on its head. Jim finally collapsed after all that turmoil and years of interviews in which he called out Jay and clowned him. Everyone observing the scene was startled to see that the same guy who had previously intended to fight Jay at every opportunity was now hoping Heb would help revive his career. He returned to try to get a deal with the same man he'd been disparaging for decades. The rap community was looking at that switch, asking, what just happened? Since of this, a lot of people claim that GM is unreliable since he changes sides as soon as things become tough. He doesn't seem to be faithful, which is precisely why 50 Cent didn't appreciate him in the first place. Put it this way, back in 2007, hey bro, you've been at this thing. However, poetically, I'm going to keep it a stack with you. Take a look at your attire. Listen, I may be in the church house. You're not even in the same areas that I used to be. I don't know who taught you that, but you can't live like way. Now, look, I know you're doing well, but you're not seeing Nas. Let's face it, you're not seeing Nas, buddy. I told a group of people in their 40s and 50s that I was superior to them. Nobody is going to take you over. Look at you. Jim surprised the whole industry by showing up to a Gunnet event during the height of the Gunnet vs. Dipset feud. Yes, 50 invited him, but not to sign him or operate with him. No, 50 was running strategy while Jim was still learning the fundamentals, and he took Jim out to show everyone, especially Cameron, how effortlessly he glides. Would pull up any place for a little limelight. It was all staged from the beginning, and when it all came to pass, 50 humiliated him in front of the whole rap industry. No partnership, no contract, nothing, just a chilly moment that served as a reminder that loyalty truly has significance in this game. After that day, 50 began to perceive Jim as someone who lacked a strong moral code and was weak under duress. Once 50 formed that impression, it sticks. Now that 50 and Jay-Z have been embroiled in a silent Cold War for years, Jim's return to Jay, searching for a lifeline, that was the last straw. The moment he signed the